Welcome to the Chronically Awesome podcast with me, Katie Rose, recording my thoughts and realizations about the mind, the body, and all things woo-woo, looking at life through the lens of spirituality, and sharing things I believe should be taught to everyone so we can begin to heal the next generations, healing traumas, transcending the ego, and living an empowered, soul-led life of pure awesomeness. This podcast has kind of come to me because it's what I'm going through, and it's something that I want to remind people of how important it is to recognize when maybe you're trying to push something, recognize when maybe you need to stop and rest and just be. And it comes in the form of your healing journey. We can get so stuck in our healing journeys, not in the way of like not progressing so much, but in the way that we get fixated on healing. We're just like, I have to heal this, I have to heal that. This is coming up. I need to know where this is coming from. And we get so stuck in it that we forget to just be. And we forget that there's a lot of answers in just being, in just feeling. Like that's the most important part as you move through things. You have to have awareness. You need to know when something isn't right. I am in that place right now where I have been, I've been working through quite a few things recently, and it's obviously brought some emotions up. It's brought some things to the surface. And as it does that, we can feel other things, or we can sometimes feel that, oh, that's a bit too much. And we can tend to dissociate or become numb. These are my own experiences literally this week. I felt quite numb, and I just had to switch off from the world. I got lost in a Netflix series because that is my way of kind of taking myself out of the world. It's a habit that I developed when I was really poorly. It's basically procrastination, but it's a form of protection for my mind and my body. And it is something I still do. I enjoy it. I like to be lost in a Netflix thing. It takes me out of where I am. It also allows my mind time to rest, as well as my body to rest, so that when I have finished my little binge on Netflix, when I come out of the other side, I'm like, oh, okay, now I can see things a bit better. I can see things a bit clearer. Obviously, there is times where you could absolutely get completely lost in that and just constantly be binging on Netflix and not doing anything else. So that, again, you need an awareness of that as well. But I tend to know my body is very good at going, okay, this is you've done what you need, you have rested, now we're ready to go again. I've learned that over the years. I have ignored that in the past and got lost for an entire week on Netflix. So that is something that I have learned, but all of it is a learning curve. All of it is practice. All of it is like, oh, okay, I did that last time, really shouldn't have done that, so I'm going to have an awareness of that next time. And when you get to that point next time, you're like, oh yes, I remember this. And you get to that point where you get to make a choice, because you can absolutely stay there for the entire week and get lost, and everything that you were going to do doesn't get done. But then you could make that choice in that moment where you're like, okay, I've learned from last time. I don't want to feel that way again. And I do want to carry on, and I do want to get these things done. And then you get to make that choice of, okay, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to get up, and I'm going to start dinner, or whatever it may be for you. So awareness is key to everything, in my opinion. You cannot change anything in a healing journey unless you have the awareness, or able to build the awareness around something. And again, takes time, takes practice. We fuck up, then we get back up and we try again. There is nothing wrong with that. That is what human is. Like, being human is fucking up, but yet we get back up. That is when we are able to learn our biggest lessons, to have our biggest realizations. And in those moments as well as when you kind of notice your patterns, that's when you're like, oh shit, yeah, no, I definitely do that quite a lot. Okay, don't want to be doing that anymore. How can I change it? So beginning of this week, so it actually started last week. I knew I was overdoing it and I didn't listen. So I had the awareness, I knew it, I felt it, I heard it from within, but I didn't listen. I chose to carry on because I felt, I had to do this by a certain date, and I had to do this and I had to do that. And my mind, my ego took over and was telling me that I didn't have the time to be able to take time off, or I didn't have time to do this or do that.
So I didn't listen. And then I held a beautiful sound bath on the Friday night. And it was almost like, because sounds are so fucking good at allowing you to rest, allowing you to breathe, allowing you to have awareness. It allows your mind, your brain waves to come out of that beta brainwave, which is great for doing, we need it. We need that. It's your waking life. It's you getting on and doing things. But when you're doing, you then create this sort of cycle where you're unable. So some people, you will probably know people like this. My mum tends to be one of these people. Not so much now, but she used to be definitely more so than what she is now anyway. And she couldn't stop. She couldn't rest because her brain waves are so used to being on the go, constantly moving. And again, it's a form of protection. Tends to be as well for people maybe who have had a lot of trauma and have their protection mode when they were going through that or when they were younger was to avoid. And so to avoid, we do. So we don't have to sit, we don't have to feel, we don't have to think about anything that makes us feel uncomfortable. So our mind protects us and is like, okay, the way we're going to move through this is to keep going, to keep moving, to keep looking ahead, which is great to get you through it. But at some point, you need to stop and take that break. You need to allow your brainwaves to slow down. This is where healing happens. You have the ability to self-heal. And as your brainwaves slow and they become slower and slower, this is when your body is able to switch into the self-healing mode. This is the most powerful element that we own within ourselves, yet we have no idea how to tap into it. And this is why meditation is great, absolutely. But for somebody that is stuck in that cycle, that is so hard to then sit. It is the most uncomfortable, probably excruciating thing to do when you are somebody so stuck in that cycle of go, go, go. So if anybody that is listening that is like, yeah, I'm totally that person who is always on the go. For you, I recommend walking as a way of meditating. You do not have to sit down to meditate. You do not have to be still and close your eyes for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour to be able to slow your brainwaves down. There are so many different ways you can listen to sound meditation, sound healing, sound journeys. And you can even do that while doing your dishes because it's a monotonous thing. Your brain loves rhythm. So as you're doing that, it's easier to kind of switch out of that overthinking doing element and come into a place where you're more connected with yourself without knowing necessarily that you're doing it. And this is what I love. I get so many aha moments when I'm washing my dishes, or like you could be hoovering or washing your bathroom or whatever it is. So that's another great way of bringing that slowing down into your life as well. Breath work is freaking awesome. And you could do that just before going bed, connecting with your breath and just allowing yourself to slow it all down. And it's so easy to do, but our mind, our ego doesn't like it because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in awareness. Your ego can't be in the present moment. So when you're in the present moment, it feels, it feels challenged. It feels like it's going to die essentially. And its main goal is to constantly stay alive. It's to keep you alive. But when you are then bringing this balance, you get challenged by the ego and you'll hear things in your mind going, oh, you don't have time, or you can't do that. But we have to do this and we have to do that. So where are you going to fit that in? And, or you're going to, can you sit there for that long? Oh, I don't think you can. You can't sit still for 5 minutes. And it will give you like a ton load of excuses. And that's its way of trying to protect itself and also you as well from its past experiences of, oh, well, if you go into this space, you might heal. And to heal, you have to face things, you have to feel things. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's good. You need it. You have to be in it. Your mind and your body and your spirit need to be able to reconnect with each other in this space of either stillness or slowing, coming back to yourself, coming back home within your heart. And this is where things arise. And this is where it can be uncomfortable in your healing journey. Absolutely. Like, I'm not going to lie. I have had some really fucking horrible things that I've had to face and feel. And it's not been like the best experience. I'm not sitting there laughing and being like, oh yeah, this is amazing that this has come up today. No, it fucking hurts and it's not easy. But I also know that every single time I have faced one of those things and felt one of those things, and I've carried on moving through it and recognizing it and healing it, that it has always been worth it on the other side. Always. Every single time. And I have had times where I have like had something come up and I've avoided for like a month. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. No, that was really uncomfortable. And then eventually, because, you know, it comes up for a reason. So it will keep coming up until you get to that point where you do face it, whether that is a week's time, a month's time, a year's time. But eventually you will face it and you will come up against it. And you will move through it and you will heal it. And when you do, you'll be like, oh, fuck it, why didn't I just do that the first time it came up? So if you are in one of those moments right now and you're like, oh yeah, do you know what? I've been feeling that. I've totally been avoiding it. I encourage you to try and work through whatever it is that's been coming up for you, because there's learnings there. There is healing there. There is so much more within it that may bring up a deeper healing again, or may allow you to then let it go fully so you can move forwards. Just a space to allow you to grow and evolve. And that is what we're supposed to do as human beings. We are supposed to grow and evolve. It's our natural state of being. It's because we are nature. We're not just a part of nature. We are nature. So nature doesn't just go, oh, I'm going to avoid that. It goes, no, okay, this is uncomfortable. I don't feel great as my leaves are dropping off, but I know that it will mean that I get to come around in another cycle and be even better, be stronger, be bigger, more beautiful flowers, brighter flowers, whatever it may be. Nature just trusts in that process. It doesn't hinder it. It doesn't try and stop any of it. It embraces it and it evolves and it grows just like we're supposed to. But we've lost that knowledge and ability sometimes of how to do that and how to go about it, which is why I like to share these things, because it's taken me a long time. It's taken me a long time to get to this place and understand all these things. So I like to share these things because I'm like, oh, I wish somebody had just like explained it to me before. So as I've been moving through this week, I got lost on Netflix. Absolutely fine. The next day I was like, okay, I want to do things. I was feeling a little bit better, but I wasn't fully like, yeah, I had a bit of anxiety coming up, which was something I hadn't really experienced for a while, in that sort of, what's the word, sort of power, how big almost it felt as the way that it kind of flowed through my chest. And, you know, I didn't take my son to something because I had that anxiety, and I stopped in that moment. And I said to myself, because this is what I come back to time and time again, doing the best that I can with the resources that I have. And when I asked myself, am I doing the best I can with the resources that I had? My first thought was like, no. And it was like the ego coming in, like, no, you could do this if you wanted to. And it went on this little spiral of, yeah, well, you could absolutely do this. You're just putting it off. And then when I kind of sat with it a little bit, I was like, no, I could physically move through this, but mentally, this will hinder me. I will suffer if I was to push myself, because I know myself so well now. I know my body, I know my mind, I know all my triggers, I know all these little things about myself so well now that I know that if I had done that, I may have gone there and ended up breaking down and crying, because I know when I'm not able to do something, when something is really out of balance, that I would just push myself for the sake of pushing myself. So trying not to get the mum guilt basically was all that I would be doing. And so I didn't go, but then I cried, I cried about it, because the ego came in and told me how shit I was. And I'm going to get emotional now because I'm still processing. And I think every podcast I would probably cry on, because I am an emotional person and I am going through things at the minute, and it's raw, and I base what I do on being raw and authentic and just being myself. But my ego is telling me that I was a shit mum, that I should be trying harder and I should be showing up, and I don't have excuses like I used to have. And and there was just like an overwhelm of this. And then I just sat and I was like, is this true? No, these are not true. I know myself well enough now to know when I've gone past the point of being able to bring the anxiety back. I have my techniques, I have my tools on how to deal with it. But the thing is, you don't want to deal with it when you're in it. You want to be dealing with it before it comes up. And it snuck up on me this time. I didn't know it was coming. So I didn't go. And then I had this ego coming in and telling me how shit I was. And then, you know, I asked myself, like, is this true? I'm like, no, it's a lie. And then I reminded myself that it's okay to put myself first. I think as mums, we tend to try and put our children first all the time, try to be the perfect mum. Doesn't exist, by the way. And we're always trying to show up. And for me, it's been a big thing anyway, because I spent so many years where I couldn't be, she's going to go, yeah. I couldn't be that mum. I couldn't show up. I physically couldn't do it. Mentally, I couldn't do it. There was no way of me being able to do that in the past. So I've been trying to spend the last few years doing that, being that mum where I can show up, because as soon as my symptoms went, I was like, oh my God, yes, I can do this. So then the ego was coming in that sense and going, you know, you don't have an excuse. You don't have those excuses that you used to have, which is absolutely true. But that doesn't mean I'm not feeling what I'm feeling. And that's the difference. Putting myself first is the most important thing, because otherwise it may have hindered me in a different way. And then I couldn't have shown up for my son in a different way the next day. Then I spoke to my mum and said, I'm just not feeling right. I'm really struggling, like emotionally, mentally. And I said, I've been beating myself up a bit about not being able to be that mum that I'm like striving to be all the time. And I just let it out, and I just had a chat with her. She took me out, she got me out the house, went and had a cup of tea, or a chai latte actually. And she got some veg and she made me a stew. And when we were out getting the coffee as well, I've been wanting to have a look at a new venue for like sound bath things. And I bumped into the guy that I wanted to speak to about it. So it was like the universe was aligning, and I was like, thank you. And it was just a really needed sign at that point, I think. And then the next day I went out for a long walk with my mum, because nature is my healing space. Like, I just need to get out, clear my energy, clear my mind, clear everything, so I can see what's underneath all the bits that are just constantly playing in my mind in this space when I'm like this, because I can have so many negative thoughts that it's harder to hear what's deeper. And this is why, like, I love sound healing, because it allows you to create this space between your thoughts to be able to see what's going on truthfully at a deeper level, rather than what is the ego mind and all that side of stuff that is just forms of protection, trying to keep you safe in the best way that it knows how to, based on old programming, based on you being a child. Like, all of it is based on, by the time you're 10, you know, you have your beliefs. So everything that you are currently running on is like a bypass or a side effect then of everything you grew up with, which is crazy. And so we come to today. And today I am in this space of feeling my emotions, just feeling sad this morning. So I've gone from numb at the beginning of the week and dissociated to coming back into my body after I allowed myself that space. Then I spoke to who I needed to speak to. My mum is the person I go to. Lee, my husband, is not very good with emotions. So I know that if I tried to get what I need from him in that way, I wouldn't be met with what I need. My needs wouldn't be met. So I outsourced that part, because it's not his fault that he isn't able to speak his emotions, that he doesn't have that vocabulary, because I didn't have that vocabulary a couple of years ago. So I now speak to other people that can give me what I need so that I can move through things. Otherwise, it would end up causing friction between me and my husband, because I would get annoyed for something that he can't give me. And that isn't his fault that he can't do that, because that's his own experiences and his own traumas and everything else that he's been through that has created him in his way and his inability to express himself. So you can just imagine a couple of years ago, what a right mess we used to be in being able to try and have a conversation. So between the two of us not being able to express anything, it was a right nightmare. And so today I am just in this space of wanting to share, to let you guys know that wherever you are on your journey is just where you need to be. And I think with social media, you keep seeing all these things of how to heal, how to do this, and you should be doing this, or you should be doing this, and you should be trying to follow this and that, and have you done this, have you done that? And you can get so lost and overwhelmed even by all this information. And, you know, I am somebody that puts things out there that I find useful, or knowledge or information that I have, but that doesn't mean I'm telling you that this is what you need right now. You have to have that discernment in what you need right now. If something resonates, then try it, absolutely. But if you are just seeing things over and over again, that you're supposed to be in this space of like, and oh, this is happening for a reason. And I 100% believe everything happens for a reason. But sometimes when you're in it, it's hard to be happy, be positive, be all these things. And that's because you're not supposed to be. You're supposed to feel all your emotions, anger, frustration, fear. Like, you're supposed to feel all these things, but at a level that isn't going to hinder you. So this is why you have to acknowledge it. This is why you have to have the awareness. Know something's not right. Know that something is coming up. So having that awareness allows you to know that there's something happening. So while you're going through it, you still have that awareness of, oh, interesting, this came up, or this just came up while I'm washing the dishes, or whatever it may be. That doesn't mean you have to do anything about it in that moment, right there, right then. It doesn't mean you have to go, oh, where does this come from? Because this is where I got stuck before in my healing journey. I got so stuck in the mind that I forgot about the body and the emotions, that I was questioning everything, because I know that everything has a purpose. Every behavior has a purpose. There's a reason why you do it, because most of the time it comes to a form of protection. Somehow it's protecting you. And when I started looking at everything like that, and it made sense. So then I was like, okay, and everything has a root cause. So where's the root cause? And I would go back through everything so I could find my answers of where everything stemmed from and how this was all happening, which is great. It's great knowledge to have. Absolutely. But if at the same time you're avoiding what is going on in the body, in your emotions, then you're avoiding a massive part of who you are, what you are experiencing, and how to heal. To be able to fully heal, you have to feel the emotions and move through them. Like for me, I learned with the mind, it's my biggest changing point. If you don't know my story, NLP was the point where all my symptoms went. That was my biggest moment of healing. It was powerful. It was transformative. However, it did not address the emotions. NLP is very much about the mind, reprogramming, rewiring, and it worked fucking brilliantly. I cannot deny that, because every symptom went within a day. There was no denying that. However, the emotions were still stuck in my body. I know from sound healing, I know from my clients, I know from all the learnings, all the courses that I've been on how our emotions are stored in different organs, that are stored in different areas of your body, that there's different frequencies for different ones, and that your body has a way of categorizing them throughout your system. And I know all this. Yet I'd forgotten it because I had a fear of having to feel it. I liked that I didn't have symptoms. I didn't think there was any point in then addressing the emotions, because what is the point if I've got my life back? I have my body back. So why should I have to feel everything that I've left behind? But I cannot tell you how powerful it has been to feel those emotions, to embrace them, to welcome them, to thank them. That was a powerful one, to thank them, because without them, I would not be who I am. Without them, I would not have had the experiences that I had, which means I wouldn't be able to help my clients now because I wouldn't understand what they're going through or been through, because I wouldn't have been through it. And feeling the emotions and asking what that part of myself, that old version of myself, needed was honestly life-changing in the way my body felt when I fully released it. And like, I cried hard going through these processes, so hard. Every time I feel these things, I'm like, I'm such a mess. I'm like proper, like ugly snot crying. Like it's ugly. Like, it is not pleasant to watch, which is why I do it when I'm in my house on my own, or I'm in the bedroom away from people, because honestly, sometimes I'm like, oof, that was a bit intense. And I'm like almost wailing as well. Like, it's so big because there's so many emotions. And for me, there were so many screams that I held in. There was like a box that I had to bring out in one of my last healings. And it was me, every scream that I didn't release, every scream I kept in, every scream I tried to hide from the people around me. And when I let that out, it was like I was almost screaming, wailing, crying as I let that out, because it was all the stuff that I'd just put in a box and put away somewhere, thinking that it'll just disappear. But it doesn't, because it's energy, and energy, you can't just get rid of energy. It has to be transformed. It has to be moved through you. It has to go through your system, your energetic system, to be fully released outside of yourself. Then, and only then, is it fully let go from the body. So this is why I like sounds, because sounds will bring it up. You don't need to know what it is, but like, sounds will just bring it up, and you'll feel the emotions. You will feel something. You might have memories, you might have things come up, but it's just like bringing everything to the surface that's lingering, that's blocking your energy system. That is like, no, this sounds is like a language. It's like, oh, it knows when something's out of place. It knows when something's not right. And it has a little chat with it. And it just like keeps vibrating up against it until eventually it's like, that release. And it can be crying. I also get as well tremors. So like, tremors was a bad symptom before, and now I'll get like these twitches and shakes and tremors in a form of release, because it's like, if you think of an animal when it's like attacked or anything and it gets away, it just has a shake to get rid of that sort of trauma. It doesn't hold on to it. It has a shake, gets rid, and it just carries on like nothing fucking happened. But we don't do that as human beings. We just instead take everything and put it inside ourselves and just hope it's just going to pass and we'll forget about it. But your body never forgets. It remembers it all. It holds it all. And until you fully embrace and address it, you can't fully let it go. And, you know, that's what I'm working on this week, and just allowing these things to come up and arise. And, you know, there's a few things that I'm like, oh, that's a bit of a big energy, but I'm just allowing it. I'm crying it out when I need to. I'm feeling it. I'm saying anything that I might need to say out loud. And journaling for me as well is another one that I quite like to do, on just getting shit out, because once it's out, I feel like I can find what's underneath that layer, that first layer of like verbal diarrhea that I tend to have. I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, oh, actually, that could be this. Or that makes sense. It actually connects to this. And that's when I start to get my aha moments of what is really trying to come up, not what I consciously think is trying to come up, but it's like what is deep within, what is really there, what is really trying to come through. And in those moments is where my biggest healings come, because I'm like, yeah, do you know what? I kind of knew that was there, but I didn't know exactly what was happening or where it was coming from. And by doing these little things that help me to release through meditations, through walking, through journaling, through sound healing, all these things get rid of that shit, so you can actually see what's left, what is really at the core of what has been all these sort of almost chaotic vibrations beforehand. And that's because somehow it's all attached and linked back to that main one, that big one. But there are times when you're not ready to face that yet. You know, everything is layered, and it's not linear. It's not a straight line. It is a spiral as you go through things. And the more you face things in a way that feels right to you, the easier it will be to overcome things. Everything has its place. I need sometimes to be able to question and find the root causes, but I also have to have that balance and that need for space to just be and to just feel and not question anything and just allow it. I have to have those two things to have that balance. And my spirit then is that anchor in space, because that is where I come home to. That is where I feel refreshed and refilled to be able to be the mum that I want to be. So I just wanted to share this with you guys so that maybe it just hits one person, maybe it hits a few of you where you feel seen or feel heard and feel like it's safe to rest, to stop, to slow down, to have a day on the sofa, whatever it may be for you, to hold that powerful space within yourself and go, no, I need to put myself first. Because as well, if you think about it, your kids are watching you, they learn from you. And if they see you putting yourself first, they will know that their own needs are just as important as anybody else's when they grow up. That it's important to put themselves first before somebody else. Instead of always being that person running around, rushing around, doing everything for everyone else. So if they're seeing you do that and they're learning from you, they mimic you, then as they then go on in their life, they'll be conditioned into thinking they're supposed to do all these things and people please for everybody else, when in reality, it should be they look after themselves first. It's all programming, it's all conditioning, it all comes down to these things, but they can all be changed, all of them. But we have to put the work in to do it as well. And like I said, it's not easy, it's uncomfortable, and it can be painful, but it will be worth it in the end. Just make sure that you know that you're working in the way that works for you, whether it is the question inside and getting to the root cause, because you have to get to the root cause for the deepest of healings. But you also need to take time and space just to be as well. They have to come together of the mind and the body. They are so deeply connected, so intertwined. And as you bring that all into balance, this is when you find your soul self, your soul purpose, because you know who you are then, because you know your truth. You know what is you and what isn't. The more that you work with yourself and get to know yourself, get to know your triggers, get to know what your body feels like when something doesn't feel good, get to know what your body feels like when your mind feels filled with like excitement and joy when something does feel good, and get to know you at the deepest level possible. And then you will understand when things aren't in alignment and when things are out of balance. And it will give you that opportunity then, because you'll have the awareness to be able to choose something different for yourself moving forwards. So I hope you have enjoyed this podcast episode. And I am sending love out to everyone who needs it right now. And I thank you for joining me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. And if you have, then please share on your social media. And if you'd like to share your thoughts with me directly, you can message me at Absolute Alchemy UK on Instagram. And if you haven't done so already, hit the follow button to follow the podcast for more awesomeness. And maybe I'll see you here next time.